today is to use Power BI to connect to Dynamics GP data and build a simple dashboard. There are two different ways we can connect to GP data. We can use the SQL connection. We can connect to a table or view. The disadvantage to this method is that it has a direct load impact on the server. Large queries could affect SQL performance. The second method is to use an OData connection. It supports data caching to reduce SQL server load. The disadvantage with this method is it can be slower than direct SQL. Let's review the first method of connecting using a SQL connection. So I'm going to bring up Power BI Desktop, and we're going to click on Get Data, and I'm going to select SQL Server. So we have to supply the server name. So in our case, this is ppg demo serve. And we can supply the database or leave this blank. We're going to provide the database ID though, which is TWO. And I also have this advanced options button, which I can provide an actual SQL statement. I'm just going to leave this blank, however, though, and hit OK at this point. This is going to go out and return all the objects, tables or views associated that are within this database. So as you can see, I can see the accounts. We're going to work with the accounts transactions. So I'm just going to select that particular view. And now I have the option, I get a preview of the view. I have the option of selecting this and actually clicking edit. What this allows us to do is modify the model before loading the data. So I'm going to click edit here. And this is bring up Power Query Editor. So I now can click on choose columns and actually return only the columns I want to see. So I'm just going to select a few here. So transaction, account number, account description, debit, credit, account category, and what else are we going to select? Let's do originating, master ID, master name, and I'm going to hit OK at this point. And now I can transform the data just like we've done in other webinars. So I have, transaction date being date here. So I'm just going to select that column. We're going to transform this and say I only want to see date only. So I'm going to select date only. And I'm going to add an extra column. So I have debit and credit here. We're going to add another column. So click add column. We're going to say custom column. I'm going to add the net amount. So I'm just going to put net here. I'm going to select debit less credit and hit OK. I can move this around. I'm going to make this decimal number, and I can remove this just after here. Now that I'm okay with my data model and I have it the way I want it, I can just close and apply, and my data is getting loaded into my data model, creating the connection to the SQL database. So once again, this works if I'm on-prem and I'm actually in the same environment of where my SQL server lives. So if I was external, on a desktop computer at home or something, I obviously wouldn't be able to connect using this method to the SQL server directly unless it was exposed externally, which is probably not the best idea. So at this point I have my data and I can start building a pretty simple dashboard. So we're going to do categories. I'm going to bring that on and I'm going to make that a slicer, and we'll change that to be we're going to have a select all option. We're going to make that horizontal. That makes that a little bigger. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build, I'm going to bring the account number, and we're going to bring the net into here. And we're going to change this to a matrix. going to bring the year and so we're going to bring year, and I'm going to bring month to the column view. So as you can see, as I can click on other income or tax expense or salaries and expenses, and basically getting a year breakdown of this information. But I can also drill onto here, fairly simple little dashboard that I built. I can drill onto here and select and actually see the month breakdown by year, which is sort of nice. By account, so I can choose multiple accounts. So just a little picker, category picker, and then see which GL accounts and the totals by month. So pretty simple dashboard that I just built very quickly here. The other connection method we have is the OData service. So the service must be installed and configured on your server before you can use the OData feed. So once it's installed, the next thing we'll go into is I'll show you is inside of GP the configuration of the OData service. So under the administration tab in Dynamics GP, I have OData. I have configure OData service, the data sources, and publish. So there are basically three components to this. So I'm going to click on the setup here, and we have to supply the OData service URL. You'll notice this is HTTPS, so there's a certificate that should be attached to the URL itself. So once we've set up configure the OData service, the next piece is the data sources. So we can expose a bunch of different views or tables as part of the data service. So as you can see in this case, I can turn on or off only certain views or objects that I want visible. So I can scroll down. So here's all the out-of-the-box views, and object type, I can switch this to tables and see a bunch of tables. So for now, I've only exposed a couple different objects. So once I've exposed those objects, the next thing I want to do is actually publish the OData, those objects, as a URL. So you would click this little button to select it, and then you would basically publish it. So I'm just going to select, we're going to select account transactions. So I'm just going to highlight that as my URL, hit OK. So now that it exposed it, it's set up and it's visible. I can, within Power BI, go get data and actually connect to the OData feed. And all I have to do is supply it the URL here that is exposed and hit OK. This will go out and get a JSON object back from the OData feed and then supply that back into the report in a second. So as you can see, it's a little bit slower than direct SQL. And the URL at this point is working internally only, but this OData service could be exposed externally outside your environment. So as you can see, it's returned the same information I pretty much got in the dashboard we just built with the SQL connection, but here is all the data that I could want in that account transactions view. I can edit this, and it brings up from here the exact same thing we had before, which is I can select which columns I want, and it works exactly the same way as I had configured it with the SQL connection, just a different way to connect. In today's webinar, we reviewed the different ways that you can connect to GP data.